Alex Thompson stared at his computer screen, the glow casting harsh shadows across his weathered face. At 53, he'd built everything from scratch: a successful investment firm, a beautiful home in Boston's suburbs, and what he'd always believed was a perfect marriage. 28 years with Sarah, and not a single regret, until now. The email that changed everything sat innocently in his inbox, sent by an anonymous account. "Your wife isn't who you think she is. Look deeper." Attached were bank statements, transfers from their joint account to an unknown destination, scattered over the past 6 months. Small amounts at first, growing larger. The latest one, $50,000. He leaned back in his leather chair, loosening his tie. The spring evening outside his office window painted the sky in shades of purple and orange, but Alex barely noticed. His mind raced through recent memories: Sarah's increased charity work meetings, her new friendship with that art dealer Marcus, the late-night phone calls she'd take in the garden. "Mr. Thompson?" His assistant Jessica's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your daughter Claire is here." Claire. His rock. At 26, she'd followed in his footsteps, working her way up through a rival investment firm. Their weekly dinners were sacred, a tradition they'd maintained since her college days. "Send her in, Jess." The door opened, and Claire swept in, her dark hair tied back in a professional bun, suit jacket draped over her arm. One look at his face, and her smile faded. "Dad? What's wrong?" Alex gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down, sweetheart. I need your expertise on something." He turned the monitor toward her, watching as she scanned the suspicious transactions. Her brow furrowed, the same expression he'd seen countless times when she tackled complex problems. "These patterns." She leaned closer. "They're structured to avoid detection. Someone's been careful to keep each transfer under reporting thresholds." She looked up, her brown eyes, so much like her mother's, filled with concern. "How long has this been going on?" 6 months, as far as I can tell." He pulled up another document. "And there's more. Credit card statements showing restaurant charges in places Sarah never mentioned visiting. Hotel bookings when she was supposedly at charity events." Claire's face paled. "Dad, are you suggesting?" He held up a hand. "I don't know what I'm suggesting. Your mother, she's been different lately. Distant. I thought it was just empty nest syndrome since you moved out, but now. Have you talked to her about it?" Alex shook his head. "How do you start that conversation? Hey honey, are you embezzling from our joint account? Besides, if she is involved in something." He couldn't finish the sentence. Claire was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming on the desk, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. You need to know more before confronting her. If these transfers are what they look like, she's been planning something for months. Confronting her too soon could make everything worse. "My thoughts exactly." He pulled out a business card from his drawer. "I hired someone. David Chen. Ex-FBI, now runs a private investigation firm. He comes highly recommended for delicate situations." "A pie?" Claire's eyes widened. "Dad, that's necessary," he finished firmly. "I need to know what I'm dealing with. Chen's team will track the money, follow Sarah if necessary. If she's in trouble, I need to know. If she's..." He swallowed hard. "If she's planning to leave, I need to protect myself." Claire reached across the desk, squeezing his hand. "Whatever's happening, we'll figure it out together." "But Dad..." Her voice softened. "Be careful. If Mom realizes you're investigating her." "I know." He managed a weak smile. "That's why I need your help. You're the only one I can trust completely. Chen will report to both of us. Whatever we discover, we handle it as a team." Just then, his phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, "Don't forget, dinner with Marcus and his wife tonight. 7:30 at La Maison." Marcus. The art dealer who'd suddenly become such a fixture in their lives. Alex's jaw tightened as he showed Claire the message. "Perfect timing," Claire said, her expression hardening. "I'll come too. It's time I met this Marcus properly." As they prepared to leave the office, Alex's phone buzzed again. An email from Chen, "Initial findings ready for review. Urgent matters to discuss. Meet tomorrow, 8 a.m. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. 28 years of marriage, and tonight he'd sit across from his wife at dinner, watching her every move, analyzing every word. Was she really capable of betraying him? Or was there something bigger, more dangerous at play? "Ready?" Claire asked, holding the door. He nodded, straightening his tie. Time to put on a show. As they walked toward the elevator, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that tonight's dinner would be the beginning of a journey that would either save his marriage, or destroy everything he'd spent his life building. Little did he know, the web of deception he was about to uncover went far deeper than he could imagine, and some of his most trusted allies were already playing their parts in a carefully orchestrated plan that had been years in the making. La Maison's soft lighting couldn't mask the tension at the corner table. Alex studied his wife across the flickering candlelight, searching for traces of the woman he'd married nearly 3 decades ago. Sarah looked radiant in her navy dress, her silver-streaked hair elegantly styled, but something in her eyes had changed. A guardedness that hadn't been there before. Marcus Romano dominated the conversation, his cultured European accent spinning tales about his latest art acquisitions. His wife Isabella sat quietly beside him, occasionally touching her throat where a delicate scarf concealed what looked like a bruise. Alex hadn't missed Claire's sharp intake of breath when she'd noticed it earlier. "The piece we're considering for the Foundation's charity auction," Marcus was saying, "is quite extraordinary. Isn't it, Sarah?" Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine. "Yes, the proceeds will help fund the new women's shelter. The same shelter where you've been spending so much time lately." Claire's question carried an edge that made Alex wince. His daughter had inherited his inability to hide disdain. "Someone has to do the work, dear." Sarah's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Speaking of work, how's the merger going at your firm?" Before Claire could answer, Isabella suddenly stood. "Excuse me," she whispered, hurrying toward the restroom. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then followed. Marcus watched them go, his expression unreadable. "Women," he chuckled, but the sound held no warmth. "Always traveling in pairs." Alex felt Claire's foot press against his under the table, their old signal for something important. Following her subtle glance, he noticed Marcus slipping what looked like a small envelope into Sarah's purse, which she'd left hanging on her chair. "Tell me more about this artwork," Alex said, keeping Marcus engaged while Claire casually draped her jacket over Sarah's chair, using the movement to snap a quick photo of the envelope with her phone. In the following minutes, Alex maintained his facade of interested conversation while his mind raced. What was in that envelope? Money? Documents? His years in investment banking had taught him to read people, and everything about Marcus set off warning bells. When Sarah and Isabella returned, Alex noticed Isabella's reapplied makeup couldn't quite hide her reddened eyes. More tellingly, Sarah's usual composed demeanor had cracked slightly, revealing a flash of what looked like fear, or was it determination? The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced smiles and careful conversations. As they waited for their cars outside, Marcus pulled Sarah aside for what appeared to be an intense discussion. Alex watched as his wife nodded repeatedly, her shoulders tense. "Dad," Claire whispered, showing him her phone. The photo revealed part of a logo on the envelope, something with a crown symbol. "I've seen this before, in some files at work. It's connected to a series of offshore accounts we've been investigating." Before Alex could respond, Sarah rejoined them, linking her arm through his with an almost desperate grip. Lovely evening, wasn't it? The drive home was quiet, Sarah staring out the window while Alex navigated the dark streets. In their driveway, she surprised him by asking, "Remember our first apartment? That tiny place in Cambridge?" "Of course." His throat tightened. "You made it home with just 3 plants and those terrible curtains your mother gave us. We were happy there." Her voice carried a weight he couldn't quite understand. Everything was simpler. She got out of the car before he could respond, disappearing into the house while he sat there, haunted by her words. Inside, he found her already upstairs, the master bedroom door closed, another recent change in their routine. Alex's phone buzzed, a text from Claire. "Emergency at work. Need to see you now." 20 minutes later, he pulled into the deserted parking lot of their old neighborhood park. Claire's car was already there, and she was pacing beside it, her face pale in the streetlight. "I called in some favors," she said without preamble. "That logo? It's linked to a series of international art deals." "But Dad, these aren't normal transactions. The art pieces are just cover for something bigger. And some of the people involved, they've disappeared." Alex felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Mom might not be betraying you, she might be trapped in something dangerous. And that woman tonight, Isabella? The way she acted, those bruises." Claire's voice cracked. "I think they're both in trouble." Just then, Alex's phone lit up with another email from Chen, urgent. "Evidence suggests your wife's life may be in danger. Do not go home. Meet immediately." As Alex showed Claire the message, a car turned into the parking lot, its headlights sweeping across them. For a moment, relief flooded through him, until he realized the car wasn't slowing down. "Claire, move." He grabbed his daughter, pulling her behind his car as the unknown vehicle accelerated toward them, its engine roaring in the quiet night. The message was clear: someone was watching, and they weren't afraid to act. As the car disappeared into the darkness, leaving them shaken but unhurt, Alex held his trembling daughter close. "What has your mother gotten herself into?" he whispered. But the real question burning in his mind was darker: how much time did they have to save her? In his pocket, his phone buzzed again. A text from Sarah: "I love you. I'm sorry. Don't try to find me." Dawn found Alex in David Chen's office, a sparse room dominated by monitors and filing cabinets. The PI's face was grave as he spread photographs across his desk. Each image told a fragment of a story Alex hadn't been able to see, Sarah leaving anonymous envelopes at different locations. Isabella Romano photographed with other women, all wearing similar scarves to hide bruises. Bank records showing a pattern that went far beyond simple theft. "Your wife isn't stealing from you, Mr. Thompson," Chen said quietly. "She's been helping women escape. The money, the late-night meetings, the art foundation, it's all part of an underground network. But she got in too deep." Claire, who hadn't left her father's side since the attack in the parking lot, leaned forward. "The bruises on Isabella weren't from an accident, were they?" Chen shook his head. "Marcus Romano isn't just an art dealer. We've linked him to a network of wealthy men who—" He paused, choosing his words carefully, "who treat their wives as property. The art business is a cover for money laundering, but it's also how they maintain control. These women are trapped by more than just physical abuse, their movements are monitored, their finances controlled, their children threatened." Alex's hands trembled as he picked up a photo of Sarah meeting with Isabella in a coffee shop. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago. Both women's faces showed the strain of carrying secrets too heavy to bear alone. "Sarah discovered what was happening through her charity work," Chen continued. "She started small, helping one woman at a time, using your joint account to create escape funds. Isabella was supposed to be next, but something went wrong. Our sources indicate Romano discovered the network. That's why she disappeared." Alex's voice was hollow. She's trying to protect us. Yes, but she's also in grave danger. Romano's organization doesn't forgive betrayal. We've identified at least 3 women who tried to escape in the past year. None of them were ever seen again. Claire's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Her face paled as she read it. "Dad, it's from Mom's private email. She set up an automatic message to be sent if she didn't enter a code within 24 hours. Alex moved to read over her shoulder, his heart stopping at the words. "My darling daughter, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. Everything I've done was to protect others from men like Marcus. The evidence is in the place where you broke your arm when you were 7, remember how you climbed too high, trying to touch the clouds? What I've uncovered goes deeper than you can imagine. Some of the names involved, sweetheart, trust no one except your father. And Alex, my love, I'm so sorry for the pain I'm causing you. But I couldn't stand by and watch more lives be destroyed. If anything happens to me, give the files to reporter Angela Martinez at the Globe. She'll know what to do." "The old treehouse," Claire whispered. "At our summer cottage in Vermont." Chen was already reaching for his phone. "I'll send a team." "No." Alex's voice was firm. "Sarah's right about not trusting anyone. Claire and I will go ourselves. But first." He turned to his daughter. "We need to talk to Isabella. If Sarah was helping her escape, she might know where your mother is now." "That's suicide," Chen protested. "Romano watches her every move." "Not at her yoga class," Claire said suddenly. "I saw the schedule on her phone at dinner. She goes every Tuesday morning to Golden Lotus Studio. It's the only time she's alone." Alex checked his watch. "That's in 2 hours. Mr. Thompson." Chen's voice carried a warning. "These people have already tried to kill you once. If you pursue this, they have my wife." Alex's eyes hardened. "And they've been destroying women's lives while hiding behind their wealth and connections. It ends now." As they prepared to leave, Alex's phone lit up with another message. This one was from a blocked number, containing only an image, Sarah's reading glasses, broken and bloody, laid out on what looked like concrete. Claire gripped her father's arm. "Dad! She's alive." His voice was steel. "Your mother's too smart to let them." He couldn't finish the sentence. But as they drove toward the yoga studio, Alex's mind raced through memories, Sarah's growing distance over the past months, the way she'd held him too tightly some nights, as if memorizing how it felt to be safe. How had he missed the signs that his wife was waging a secret war against monsters who hid behind respectable facades? The answer came with crushing clarity. He'd been so focused on his own fear of betrayal that he'd failed to see her courage. Now, somewhere in the city, Sarah was alone, possibly hurt, having sacrificed everything to protect others. And her time was running out. Claire touched his arm gently. "Dad, look." Ahead of them, Isabella's distinctive red Mercedes was pulling into the yoga studio's parking lot. But she wasn't alone. In the passenger seat sat a man Alex recognized from Sarah's charity foundation board, another wealthy donor whose wife had recently taken an extended vacation abroad. "It's not just Romano," Claire breathed. "The whole foundation is either part of their network or working to fight it," Alex finished. "And we have no idea who's on which side." As they watched Isabella enter the studio, both father and daughter understood, their next move could either save Sarah or seal her fate. The weight of that knowledge hung between them as Alex parked the car, his hand instinctively checking for the small recorder Chen had given him. "Ready?" he asked his daughter. Claire's answer was cut off by the sound of shattering glass. Through the studio's front windows, they could see Isabella crumpled on the floor, a dark figure standing over her. The choice was made for them. "Call 911, Alex barked, already running toward the building. But even as he moved, he knew, this wasn't a random attack. Someone had discovered Isabella's plan to escape, and was sending a message to anyone else who might try to help her. The real question was, would they find Sarah's broken glasses waiting for them inside? The fluorescent lights of Boston General Hospital cast harsh shadows across Isabella Romano's face as she lay in the recovery room. The attack had left her with a concussion and a fractured wrist, but the physical wounds weren't what concerned Alex most. It was the look in her eyes, a mixture of relief and terror he'd seen before, in Sarah's gaze during their last dinner together. "They wanted me to know I couldn't escape," Isabella whispered, her Italian accent thicker through her tears. "But you're Sarah," she gave me hope. "She showed me I wasn't alone." Claire sat beside the hospital bed, holding Isabella's uninjured hand. In the hours since the attack, they'd learned the truth about Sarah's mission, piece by heartbreaking piece. Each revelation felt like a blade twisting in Alex's chest, not from betrayal, but from the knowledge that his wife had carried such a burden alone. "It started 2 years ago," Isabella continued. "Sarah noticed the signs because she worked with domestic violence survivors in college. She recognized what others missed, how some of us at the foundation galas would flinch at sudden movements, how we'd check our phones constantly, afraid of missing a message. Alex remembered those galas, how he teased Sarah about spending so much time with the society ladies instead of mingling with potential donors. Now, every memory was being rewritten, colored by the weight of what she'd been trying to accomplish. The network grew slowly, Isabella explained. Sarah was careful. She created a system, small withdrawals, legitimate-looking charitable donations, art purchases that could be resold to create untraceable funds. Each woman she helped would, when safe, help another. Her voice broke. "I was supposed to help Elena next. Marcus's business partner's wife. The attack wasn't random," Claire said softly. "They knew you were planning to leave." Isabella nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Sarah has evidence. Documents, recordings, a whole database of their operations. The art deals, the offshore accounts, the women who disappeared. She knew they'd kill her if they found out, but she kept gathering proof. She said." Isabella's voice caught, "She said some things are worth dying for." Alex's phone buzzed, a text from Chen, Vermont house under surveillance. "Romano's men arrived an hour ago. They're waiting for you." Claire read the message over his shoulder, her face paling. "The tree house." "Won't matter soon," Isabella interjected urgently. Sarah knew they'd figure it out eventually. "The evidence there is just a copy. The real database." She glanced at the door before lowering her voice. "It's hidden in plain sight, in your office, Alex. In that hideous modern art piece she insisted you display last Christmas." Alex's mind raced to the abstract sculpture sitting in his office, a wedding anniversary gift he'd never quite understood. Sarah had been insistent about its placement, making sure it was visible from the security cameras but not too close to any windows. "There's more," Isabella continued. "Sarah discovered one of the foundation board members is an FBI agent, working deep cover. Agent Catherine Martinez, she poses as a reporter for the Globe. She's been building a case for years, but they needed proof of the international connections." A noise in the hallway made Isabella flinch. Claire moved instinctively to block the door's window, but it was just a nurse passing by. "Sarah's last message," Alex said slowly. "She mentioned a reporter named Martinez. Catherine's cover is perfect, she really writes articles, maintains sources. That's how Sarah found her. They've been working together, gathering evidence for a coordinated takedown. But something went wrong. Someone talked." Isabella's monitor began beeping as her heart rate spiked. "They're going to kill her, Alex. Not just for helping us escape, but because of what she knows. The names in that database, politicians, judges, business leaders." "Mr. Thompson." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "There's a Detective Roberts here to take Mrs. Romano's statement." Alex saw the flash of terror in Isabella's eyes. "What precinct?" he asked casually. "Third," the man answered, reaching for his badge. "There is no third precinct in Boston," Claire said sharply. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The detective reached under his jacket. Alex lunged forward, tackling him as Claire hit the emergency call button. Isabella screamed. A gun clattered to the floor, spinning away under the bed. In the chaos that followed, Real police arriving, hospital security swarming, Alex's phone lit up with a new message. A video this time. Sarah, looking exhausted but alive, holding today's newspaper. "Proof of life," a text followed. "For now. The database for your wife, Mr. Thompson. You have 6 hours." Claire helped her father up from the floor, both of them shaken but unharmed. "Dad," she whispered, "that sculpture in your office, it's been there less than a year. In full view of their surveillance. If Mom hid the evidence there. Then she wanted them to find it," Alex finished, a glimmer of understanding dawning. She knew they were watching. Everything, the withdrawals, the meetings, even her disappearance, it's all been a trap, Isabella breathed. Sarah's not just gathering evidence. She's forcing them to expose themselves. But as Alex looked at the video of his wife again, he saw something in her eyes that others might miss, a message meant only for him. She was blinking rapidly, a pattern he recognized from their early days of dating. Morse code. 3 words that made his blood run cold. Not their prisoner. The safe house was modest, a small apartment above a bookstore in Cambridge, its windows overlooking rain-slicked streets. Catherine Martinez, her FBI badge now visible on her belt, spread surveillance photos across a worn kitchen table. Each image told part of Sarah's story from the past year, revealing a woman whose quiet strength had gone unnoticed by almost everyone, even her own husband. "Your wife wasn't just helping women escape, Mr. Thompson," Martinez said softly. "She was building a case that could break open decades of systematic abuse and corruption. But more importantly, she was showing these women that they weren't powerless, that they could fight back." Alex picked up a photo of Sarah sitting with a young woman he didn't recognize. They were in a coffee shop, and Sarah was holding the woman's hand, her expression full of gentle understanding. The date stamp showed it was from just 3 months ago. "Emily Chen," Martinez explained. "Wife of a tech executive. She reached out to Sarah after a foundation event, desperate for help. 2 days later, her husband reported her missing. She's safe now, working with domestic violence survivors in Seattle." She paused. Sarah gave her back her life. Claire, who had been quiet since they arrived, touched another photo. "I remember this day. Mom was supposed to meet me for lunch but cancelled last minute. Said she had a migraine." The photo showed Sarah in a hospital emergency room with Isabella, supporting her as a doctor examined what looked like cigarette burns on her back. The timestamp matched the lunch date. "Your mother chose to miss lunch with you that day because Isabella had finally found the courage to seek medical care," Martinez said. Sarah knew that if Isabella went alone, she might lose that courage. "These moments, they're like windows. If you don't step through them when they open, they might never open again," Alex finished, his voice thick with emotion. He remembered all the times Sarah had seemed distracted, tired, or distant over the past year. How he'd felt hurt, confused, even suspicious, while all along, she'd been carrying the weight of other women's survival on her shoulders. "The database in your office," Martinez continued, "it's a decoy. The real evidence is scattered across multiple locations, held by women Sarah helped save. Each piece meaningless alone, but together." She smiled grimly. "Together, they tell a story that will bring down not just Romano, but dozens of powerful men who thought their wealth made them untouchable." "But why disappear now?" Claire asked, her voice breaking. "Why not come to us for help? Martinez's expression softened. Because Sarah knew that if she disappeared, these men would make mistakes. They're not used to women they can't control. It's driving them crazy that they can't find her, can't hurt her, can't make her submit. And every hour they spend searching for her is another hour the women in their lives have to breathe, to think, to plan. Alex's phone buzzed, another message from the blocked number, time's running out. The database for your wife. Final offer. But this time, Alex saw it differently. The desperate tone, the escalating threats. Sarah wasn't their prisoner. She was hunting them. They're watching my office, he said slowly. Waiting for me to try to retrieve the sculpture. Martinez nodded. Sarah knew they would. Just like she knew they'd watch your house, follow your movements, monitor your calls. Every action they take requires resources, manpower. Resources they can't use to watch their wives, Claire breathed, understanding dawning in her eyes. Exactly. While they're focused on Alex, on the sculpture, on trying to find Sarah. Martinez gestured to a map covered in red pins. 17 women have escaped in the past 48 hours. Each one carrying a piece of evidence, each one now safe in a new location, ready to testify. Alex remembered Sarah's words from their last night together, everything was simpler then. Not easier, simpler. She'd been trying to tell him that sometimes, doing the right thing meant choosing the harder path. A knock at the door made them all freeze. Martinez drew her weapon, approaching silently. Through the peephole, she relaxed, then opened the door to reveal Isabella, supported by a female FBI agent. Her hospital gown had been replaced with clean clothes, her injuries properly bandaged. I'm ready, Isabella said, her voice stronger than it had been in the hospital. I want to tell my story. All of it. As Isabella settled at the table, more photos appeared, evidence she'd been gathering for months, encouraged by Sarah's gentle guidance. Bank statements, property records, images of other women with carefully documented injuries. Each piece a small act of rebellion, a quiet declaration of worth. Sarah taught me something, Isabella said, her accent thick with emotion. She taught me that survival isn't just about escaping. It's about helping others find their way out too. Each woman who breaks free makes it a little easier for the next one. Alex's phone buzzed one final time. A new video, Sarah, standing in what looked like a church, surrounded by familiar faces, women from the foundation, all of them now free, all of them holding folders of evidence. It's done, Sarah's voice was clear, strong. Come find me, my love. I'm where we first met. Claire grabbed her father's arm. The university chapel, where you first saw Mom during that charity concert. She planned this, Martinez said admiringly. Every step. She knew that when the moment came, these men would be so focused on trying to control the situation, on trying to find her, that they wouldn't see the real threat, dozens of women, finally free to speak their truth. As they prepared to leave for the chapel, Alex looked at the photos one last time, all those moments when Sarah had chosen to carry others' burdens alongside her own. He'd thought she was pulling away from their marriage, when in reality, she'd been showing him who she truly was, a warrior for those who had lost their voice, a light in the darkness for women who had forgotten their own strength. Dad, Claire said softly, we should hurry. Mom's waiting. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the first light of dawn was breaking over Cambridge. Somewhere in the city, Sarah Thompson stood in a chapel where love had first bloomed 28 years ago, surrounded by women who had reclaimed their lives. She was waiting for her family to understand that sometimes, the greatest act of love is not in holding on, but in teaching others how to break free. And Alex, finally seeing the full picture of his wife's courage, knew that their love story was about to begin a new chapter, one written not in the language of simple happiness, but in the profound dialects of justice, healing, and hope. The morning light filtered through the chapel's stained glass windows, casting rainbow shadows across the worn wooden pews. Alex paused in the doorway, his heart thundering in his chest. Sarah stood at the altar, bathed in golden light, just as she had been 28 years ago when he first saw her performing at that charity concert. But this time, she wasn't alone. Women filled the chapel, faces he recognized from foundation galas, charity events, and social gatherings. Each one stood straight-backed, folders clutched in their hands, their eyes clear and unwavering. No more hidden bruises, no more concealed fear. In their faces, Alex saw what Sarah had seen all along, not victims, but warriors who had finally found their voice. "Dad," Claire whispered beside him, squeezing his hand. Sarah turned, and Alex felt tears spring to his eyes. She looked exhausted but radiant, her silver-streaked hair loose around her shoulders, wearing the same blue sweater she'd had on the day they met. Their eyes locked across the chapel, and in that moment, all the fear and confusion of the past months dissolved into understanding. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you," Sarah said softly as they reached her. Her voice carried clearly in the hushed chapel. "But I needed you to react naturally. Your confusion, your hurt, it made them believe they were winning. It made them careless." Behind them, FBI agents led by Catherine Martinez quietly secured the building's exits. Outside, more agents were already moving to arrest key members of Romano's network, armed with evidence that had been gradually assembled like pieces of a master puzzle. "Each woman here," Sarah gestured to those gathered, "carries a piece of the truth. Bank records, photographs, recordings. Elena has proof of judicial bribes. Marie documented the art fraud. Isabella's testimony connects it all to international trafficking networks." Her voice broke slightly. "But more importantly, each woman here represents hope for others still trapped. They're proof that escape is possible, that healing can happen, that life exists beyond the shadows." Claire moved to embrace her mother, both women holding each other tightly. "The money transfers," Claire murmured. "You made them obvious enough to be noticed." Sarah nodded against her daughter's hair. "I needed them to focus on the financial trail, on the foundation, on anything except what was really happening, women helping women, one quiet rescue at a time." She pulled back, touching Claire's cheek. "You were right to be suspicious. You have your father's instincts for seeing patterns." Alex stepped forward, taking his wife's hands in his. They were trembling slightly, and he realized that despite her calm exterior, this moment was overwhelming for her too. "All those nights," he said softly, "when you held me so tightly, you were saying goodbye, weren't you? Just in case." "Every night," Sarah admitted, her voice catching. "I was so afraid that if they discovered what I was doing, they might hurt you or Claire. But I couldn't stop. Not when I saw what was happening to these women, not when I realized I could help." She squeezed his hands. "Do you remember what you told me the night we got engaged?" Alex smiled through his tears. "That love isn't just about happiness, it's about making each other better people." "You made me strong enough to do this," Sarah whispered. "Your love gave me the courage to fight for others." A commotion at the chapel entrance drew their attention. Isabella was there, supported by her sister who had flown in from Italy. Behind them, more women were arriving, daughters, sisters, mothers of those who had escaped, each one carrying their own pieces of evidence, their own stories of survival. It was never just about gathering evidence, Sarah explained, watching the reunions happening around them. It was about building a network of support that could outlast any legal victory. These women, they'll never have to feel alone again. Martinez approached, her expression both professional and gentle. "Mrs. Thompson, we're ready when you are. Romano and 12 others are already in custody. The DA is standing by to take statements." Sarah nodded, but her focus remained on her family. "There's something else you need to know," she said quietly. "That night at La Maison, when I seemed so distant. I had just helped Elena's teenage daughter escape. She was hiding in our guest room while we were at dinner. Every careful word, every staged movement, it was all to keep suspicion away from the house until she could reach safety. Alex remembered that night with new clarity, Sarah's trembling hands, her careful conversation, the way she'd touched her wedding ring repeatedly as if drawing strength from it. "You carried so much alone," he murmured. "Not alone," Sarah corrected gently. "Every time I doubted myself, I thought of you and Claire. Of the life we built, the love we share. It reminded me that everyone deserves that chance, to live without fear, to love without chains." The morning sun had risen fully now, streaming through the stained glass to paint the chapel in jewel tones. Around them, women embraced their families, shared their stories, offered support to newer arrivals still shaking with the courage it took to break free. "What happens now?" Claire asked, looking around at the unfolding scene. Sarah's smile was both tired and triumphant. "Now we help them rebuild. The foundation will be restructured, transformed into a genuine support network for survivors. These women, their strength, their stories, will light the way for others." She leaned into Alex's embrace. "And us? We start a new chapter. One where there are no more secrets between us, where we fight these battles together." As FBI agents began quietly collecting statements and evidence, Alex held his wife and daughter close, understanding finally that love takes many forms. Sometimes it's quiet dinners and shared laughter. Sometimes it's standing guard while another finds their courage. And sometimes, love is a revolution disguised as a whisper, spreading hope from heart to heart until the darkness has nowhere left to hide. In the gentle morning light of the chapel where their story began, the Thompson family stood united, surrounded by women who had reclaimed their lives. They understood now that true justice isn't just about punishment, it's about transformation, about turning pain into purpose, fear into freedom, and silence into strength. And in that sacred space, where love had first bloomed between Alex and Sarah so many years ago, a new kind of love was taking root, one that would grow to shelter and protect generations of survivors to come.